So, well, thank you so much, Esteban, for jumping on a call today. We will
Pleasure, like
try
always.
to keep this interesting and exciting. So, there are lots of things happening in the economy, especially in the global economy. So, we'll have this conversation today, just in regards to the U.S. situation as well, and then but we'll move it to uh, other places as well. So. And there's some really cool stuff happening, like in Argentina and Turkey and some other places. So that would be super cool to discuss those as well. Yeah. So that being
Okay.
said, let's let's jump in to the U.S. situation. So let's how's things going? Cool. So yeah, as we said, let's discuss some stuff happening with the Federal Reserve. As I understand, they have not raised their interest rate in the
Yeah,
last couple of
they have stopped rising the interest rates, right? So now the Fed, I mean, the obvious movement is now to maintain on a on a high level this interest rate as it is right now. So we could expect like some months of high interest rates. Um, that is how they normally do it. I don't know if Powell has the same way of thinking, but generally we need to see inflation fully controlled before we can start reducing the interest rates, right? If not, if they don't do it, if they decided to start lowering interest rates before inflation is fully controlled, that could lead to what happened in the 80s in the US with inflation coming up again to a higher high and with a deeper crisis, right? So I think that they have learned from their mistakes on the past, and so we could expect some months. Actually, in the last meeting of the FONC, the Federal meeting Reserve meeting, on the last one, Jerome Powell said like something like we could expect like 1 or 2 years of or several years of higher rates, right? So I don't recall now the exact phrase, but it was something like that. So I think that in his mind is this process of now keeping high interest rates, but not higher than they are now, but just keeping the same level that we have now for some time, for a while, to ensure inflation is fully controlled.
And well, the very last report said that they were able to kind of keep the inflation somewhere around 3%.
Yes, I mean the inflation is around 3%. The core inflation is a little bit higher; it's around 4% and something. Um, but yeah, I mean the problem with inflation is that you sometimes think that it's under control and it's not, because inflation is like a lag indicator, right? So for example, all the money that was printed to save the banks some months ago, like 2 or 3 months ago, could impact maybe in 2 or 3 months. I mean it's inflation. It's a lag indicator, right? So it doesn't show like um, a real-time result. For example, another thing, it's rent. When when they get the data to calculate the increases in rent of housing rent, that also is a lag indicator because they don't count the new contracts that are being signed, but they take the last 3 months of contracts being signed. So there are a lot of things in how inflation is calculated that it thinks or it means that it's like a lag indicator. So it may be now be 3%, but it could raise up again if the money they printed for saving the banks is not get out of the economy. And so I mean we have to see what happens in the next month. But to think that because inflation is getting down and down every month is already controlled, that's a mistake. I mean, it's still we have a way to go, and I think that's the message of Jerome Powell, right? I mean, he's expecting higher interest rates for a while, right? So yeah, it's like that.
Mm-hmm. And markets are still growing, though. It's interesting, right?
Yeah, that I mean, in general, when we have a pivot on the interest rates, there are some months of growth, right, in the market. So if we go through the last months of the charts, we will find that in December, that was when it was announced that interest rates were starting, or the pivot phase, what the first phase of the pivot was starting, the market starts growing, right? But there are some indicators now that show that could change in the near future. I mean, the buy strength is going down, and I don't think that it can last a lot more in this level. Also because U.S. economy is going to a recession. I mean, Powell needs unemployment. I mean, the Federal Reserve needs unemployment to lower inflation. I mean, so um, if you raise unemployment, the consequences are a decrease in consumption and recession. I mean, it's like one and one. No? It's one plus
Right.
one is two always, right? So I mean, we have to see what happens with the general economy, like the GDP and unemployment. But if the direction is down, I mean, if the US is going to a recession, it's hard to think that markets can grow in a context of recession. You know, it's strange to think on that scenario. So
Right.
I think that we could see an adjustment in the next maybe weeks or the next month. Also because I mean we know that markets don't grow forever, right? I mean it's always like a cycle, right? Where it grows to one point where investors decide to take profit, and that taking profit it's selling, and that selling gets the markets down for a while, and they go up again and then go down. So it's like a cycle that always repeats itself. So I mean, we have been growing for too much time now in a context where it shouldn't be growing that much. So I think that we could see an adjustment in the markets in the next in the next in the next few weeks or months. Actually, in for example, I follow a lot of the chart of Bitcoin, right? I'm an investor myself in cryptocurrencies, and I follow the chart of Bitcoin. And if you look at it now, it has crossed the line of the 30K downwards, and maybe we could see that is maybe the beginning of the adjustment of the market, or I mean, on the cryptocurrency market.
Yes.
But yeah, that's the scenario, right?
If the economy is kind of on the path for recession, how will that 24, I mean 2024 election cycle affects
Yeah, I mean,
this recession?
yeah, government. It's always a fight between governments and central banks in these scenarios, right? I mean, central banks had to do their work; they had to lower inflation, and governments want to stay in power forever. So, and recession is not a good way to stay in power, right? To win the election.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think that next year in the US will be an extremely political year. Also, I mean, we have to see what cards the Republicans play, right? I mean, they have been playing with for example, with the debt ceiling till the last minute. I mean, US was like 3 or 4 days of default. It's really close. I mean, the agreement between Republicans and Democrats was really close to um, to US default. So I mean, it's a complex political situation, right, where the government doesn't have the majority in the Congress to pass the bills they need. They need the Republicans. The Republicans want them to lose. The Federal Reserve has to lower inflation. So mean, it's a really complex political scenario, right?
Yeah, nobody knows how it's going to play out.
Yeah, it's really hard to. Yeah.
But Powell does want Biden to win, just to do
Yeah.
his job.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that yes, but I mean, there has been, and Powell has some detractors and some people that doesn't like them, but he's an Orthodox, right? And Republicans like Orthodox people, right? I mean, they are in favor of that. So I mean, I won't be sure that Powell could lose his job if Republicans wins. I mean, he's doing what any Republican will do. I mean, adjust the economy, right? So it's what Republicans do. It's okay. I mean, it's what you had to do. Yeah, I mean, you had the economy with an inflation that in the U.S. last year was about 9%. I mean, you have to lower inflation. You cannot be with 9% of inflation. If you don't
Hmm.
do it, you end up like, for example, Argentina or Turkey, where you have inflation of 70%, 80%, 40%, 100%. Venezuela, I mean, Pakistan. If you see Pakistan currency, it's now like, I mean, it has been losing value for the last, I don't know, 10 years maybe. So it's a disaster. I mean, inflation in Pakistan is totally out of control, and that is mainly because governments spend more money that they have, that they can produce, and that is done through money printing, and money printing leads to inflation. So I mean, the path that Jerome Powell is going through now, it's the correct path, despite the fact that the inflation is also his fault, right? Because during the pandemic crisis, um, a lot of money was printed. Nearly one third of all the dollars that are now in the U.S. economy were printed during the pandemic crisis. So it was like
Hmm.
absolutely crazy, right? But and that was Jerome Powell's mistake also. But now he's doing what it has to be done, right? So like that.
That actually is interesting question, and I just have like a follow-up question to that. Since you follow it, yeah. So what do you think is the difference between how Janet Yellen approached this kind of stuff? Like, oh, would she was she like leading it? How would she react? And
Well, Yellen knows that she will lose his job. I mean, and difference with Powell that may keep it if he does things correctly. Yellen will definitely lose his job, her job is if Biden loses the election, right? So I think that in that sense, um, Yellen's opinion now in relation to increased expense, in relation to I mean, yeah, it's the speech of someone that wants to stay in power. I think that it's more like that, right? Um, it's true what she says that debt ceiling had to be risen. I mean, the U.S. entering into a default could be the worst financial crisis that we could ever see in the history of mankind, right? So the United States defaulting their debt could be the worst thing that could happen to the world in history,
uh-huh.
right? In terms of economy, because the U.S. dollar would lose trust, would lose. I mean, investors would start selling the U.S. dollars, and then the world economy would go to hell, basically, right? So in that sense, I agree with Yellen that the increase in the debt ceiling had to be approved. I mean, there was no scenario where United States could default. But I I do agree with Republicans that government expense needs to be reduced, right? So if not, I mean, if you spend more and more and more, you will end up getting more and more and more debt. And now United States is getting debt at a really expensive interest rate, right? So so during the next 30 years, the United States is obligated to pay debt at 9%, 8%, 7%. So it's really, really high interest rates, right? So it has to be done something with the expense in the US. I mean, the government needs to cut expenses to control the flow of money and to help Powell to do his job, right?
So what are your predictions for the next couple of months in terms of like how Federal Reserve is going to act? Will they?
I think that the Federal Reserve could. I mean, the logical scenario would be that so that they keep the rate as it is now for some months. That would be the logical scenario, right? Why? Because starting to reduce the interest rates now could be dangerous, since inflation could rise again, and elevating again the interest rates. Also, it's useless because inflation is going down. So I think that if the Federal Reserve has taken the decision of going to the second phase of the pivot, they should respect that second phase. Despite that logical, there are a lot of experts saying that that it could rise again. And then it's like a little bit crazy, right? Because why would you elevate the interest rate again if you have just the previous meeting of, I mean, 1 month ago, you decided to go to the second phase of the pivot, and now you will go back with your decision. So, I mean, it's a really weird scenario, right? I mean, it's a really weird scenario where we should be keeping the rates at the actual level, but everyone is talking about a new rate in a new increase, sorry, in the rate. So yeah, I mean, it's really weird. I don't
Let's
have
actually
any.
go. Go ahead.
I don't have another word to express it. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's wacko. It's crazy, you know.
That being said, let's actually move a little bit across the border, let's say, and let's look into what's happening in some other parts of the world, and specifically, well, let's start with. I have two options for you. One is let's discuss.
One more thing related to the rate. One source that it's quite good to look at the probabilities of rising interest rate of the rise of interest rates is the CME group. They have developed a tool that it's called the Fed Watch tool that calculates the probability of an increase or decrease in interest rates. We are 5 days from, I mean, in 5 days we will have the next meeting, and it will be defined if a new increase in the rate will be done or not. Actually, now at this moment, I'm looking at the chart, and it's 99% probability. I mean, it's nearly 100%, because it's 99.8% probability that the rate will increase to 5.5%. So it's crazy. I mean, we are looking at a scenario where the Fed will only, start the pivot 1 month ago, and they will change it right now. So it's totally crazy. I don't know. I mean, we have to wait for the actual meeting and to see what's in Jerome Powell's mind, right? What is irrational to take this decision, right? So I think that it will be, in this case, in this Fed meeting, it will be more important what Powell says after the meeting than the number itself, right? It will be more important how he justifies another increase than the increase itself. So, it will be a really interesting speech to see, to to watch on live. And to
Right.
see how the markets react, because the markets always move when Powell talks. So it will be interesting also not only to hear what he says, but also what how the markets react to what he says, right?
And
So
how many banks will collapse after that? How many
yeah,
medium-sized
how
banks
many
will
banks
collapse?
will, yeah. I mean, because one reason for not raising the interest rates was that, right, to protect the banking system, and he's now raising them again. So, and it worked because when they decided not to raise interest rates, banks stopped crashing, right? There were no more banks crashing after that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, how many banks will crash after? Yeah, another interesting question, definitely.
Cool. So let's now move to some other states. So I have two options for you. Well, I mean, we'll discuss all of them, but two that I found to be very interesting is Argentina and Germany. So there are actually coming some reports about Germany inflation, and Germany inflation is through the roof in German
Yeah,
terms for Germany.
yeah,
Uh,
for Germany, yeah.
yeah, because I mean, Turkey wishes to have that type of inflation, but
Yeah, inflation. I think that the last I'm looking for the data right now, but I think that the last inflation rate in Germany was around 6%, 6 point something. I don't recall
yeah,
the exact number, but 6.4, something like that was. So yeah, it's really high for a developed economy, and one of the most powerful countries in the world, and the most powerful in Europe, definitely. 6.4% of inflation, it's really a lot. It's really a lot. Yeah.
but they also have this an, another one type of which is industrial inflation or the inflation in the industrial complex, and it's actually even below like even above that, and that's what people think.
What
It's
was
a little
really
bit crazy.
above the average was the food in Germany. That inflation is it's a general number, but it's calculated through different components, right? So it's food, energy, housing, right? So the different components of inflation. And in June, the food in Germany, the component of food in inflation rose 13.7%. It's a lot, more than
For
more than
Germany,
10% in 1 month. Yeah, yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it's really, really high, really, really high. Uh, yeah, it's quite a crisis there. Europe. Also, Germany has a problem that it's related to the European Union, right? So, European Union is mainly like economically sustained by Germany and France, right? That those are the two countries that keep the economy of the European Union safe, right? If tomorrow German government decides to end or to exit the European Union, like Great Britain did some years ago, that would probably mean the end of the European Union as we know it, right? So, but the problem with that is that as they are the country that is keeping the European economy alive, they also have to invest a lot of their money in keeping that European economy alive, right? So now it's like Germany is it's like carrying with all the problems of all the countries, of all the other countries that maybe don't have the power or the economic power that Germany has, right? So yeah, I mean, in the past, the European Union was mainly sustained by England and France and Germany. England left, so it's just France and Germany, and Germany is much more powerful than France, right? So in terms of economic power, so yeah, it's quite dangerous. I mean, no one is discussing the possibility of Germany leaving the European Union. That would be total crisis for European countries. But it's true that nowadays I don't know if it's really a good business for Germany to stay in the European Union. No, I mean, I think that going back to the German mark could be more beneficial than keeping on the euro, right? Because it's really I mean, it's crashing down mainly because of the pressure of that is generated by the whole European Union, right? So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like countries like Greece and stuff, and like
Yeah,
those
exactly.
well-known
Exactly.
ones.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's move to Argentina. So some crazy stuff has been happening in Argentina. Aside
We
from the
have
inflation, there was
we
also
have
this
yeah, I mean
loan rate.
we have 120% more or less inflation, and you're right. Our central bank is running out of dollars, so our currency is losing value. I don't know if on a daily basis, but on a weekly basis for sure, or a monthly basis for sure. And the government doesn't allow us to buy US dollar. I mean, if you want to buy dollars, you cannot do it just like directly. I mean, I cannot go to my bank and say, okay, I want $500. Here is my Argentinian pesos, because the bank won't sell me. I mean, that they are not allowed to. So what do I have to do if I want US dollars? Well, one option is to buy them like illegally. I mean, like in a non-regulated market where people buy and sell US dollars. And the other way is through some bonds, some Argentinian bonds that are issued in two currencies, in dollars and in pesos, Argentinian pesos. So what I do is I buy those bonds with Argentinian pesos and sell them in US dollars. But the problem with that is that now the US dollar in the official rate is about 220. If I buy dollars through these other systems and not the official, I'm paying those dollars around 500 pesos per dollar, right? So it's like double. It's like double the value of the dollar. So the economy is basically totally crashed. You know, it's a situation where the economy is totally crashed, and I mean we can also take debt. I mean, we could take debt to go out. I mean, what would a normal country do? They would take debt. With that debt, they will put all that money in the central bank. That makes a stronger country, and the currency recovers. We cannot ask for more money because we have asked for a lot of money to mainly everyone in the world. So Argentina cannot ask for more money. Just for you
Argentina
to
has
have,
also defaulted a couple of times, right?
we have also defaulted a couple of times, but just for you to have a reference, in 2018, Argentina asked to the International Monetary Fund the highest loan in the history of the IMF. It's really crazy. So
Wow.
we cannot ask for money. Our currency is destroyed, and we don't have US dollar reserves in our bank. So that's the situation, and the problem with that is that no one wants to take the actions that have to be taken. You know, when we were talking like a few minutes ago about the Federal Reserve, and we said, okay, inflation has to be stopped no matter what, right? So they stop inflation no matter what. If that generates unemployment, okay. If that generates recession, okay. So we stop inflation. Here in Argentina, we don't want, our politicians don't want to show us that path. So what they do is just keep on printing money and printing money and printing money to for social aid, for a lot of things, and all that money generates more and more inflation, right? So it's a really complicated scenario.
And your president now, is he one of those I forgot the
Peronist, yeah,
word.
Peronista, yeah,
Is
yeah,
he?
yeah, yeah, he is, yeah, he is. I mean, the Peronism is like, I think that it's like it's like a political movement that was born with Juan Domingo Perón, that was a
Yeah.
important president in Argentinian history. Some people love him, some people hate him. I think that he did some good things and some other that were not any good. But through time, that was like totally deviated, or I mean, it was totally disrupted, right? So if you see like the actual Peronism has nothing to do with the original Peronism, right? So, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, in relation to who is governing, yeah, it's Peronist. It's a Peronist government, yeah, right now, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, yeah, and they tend to
Uh,
do these things, right? Yeah, they tend to print money. I mean, it has
uh-huh.
been a constant during the last years. So yeah.
Interesting. So, well, from one very interesting leader, let's move to another very interesting leader. His name is Erdogan, and then economic situation in Turkey. It's another disaster, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's well, Turkey is going more or less for it's a quite a similar case like Argentina, right? A lot of money printing, a lot of government expenditure, um, with a very delicate political situation. You know that it's the government is like constantly about to fall, right? So it's constantly we receive news that the president could resign, the government could leave, right? So their economy in different with Argentina, we still have a pretty solid democracy, right? Our democracy is still pretty solid. No one is talking about a president resigning, despite all the issues that we are having. This president is going to end his mandate by December this year. But in Turkey, the political situation is complex, right? It's a very complicated political situation. You have everyday protests in the streets and like a war between people and police and military. Um, so yeah, it's similar. It's a similar situation to Argentina in terms of economic, or of economics, but with a more political or more complicated political scenario, right?
Uh-huh.
That's I think that the situation there.
And everyone is predicting a collapse of Pakistan as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Pakistan, I think that has already collapsed. I mean, if we look at some indicators in Pakistan, and you look at, I don't know, at Pakistan currency, inflation rate, um, and also Pakistan has been going through really hard time on the last month because of the floods. I don't know if you heard about it, but there were some really big floods, and that
Mm-hmm.
destroyed cities, factories. I mean, it was really, really bad situation. So um, I think that in their case, yeah, it's similar to Argentina. I mean, their crisis is generated by bad governments. I mean, it's not different from us here in Argentina. It's bad decision making, right? So it's governments that instead of thinking in the future, they think on now, and instead of thinking of the best for the people, they think on staying in government forever, and that cannot last, right? So they sell like a lie, like they set up like a play, like a scenario where everything is happy and money is free for everyone and nothing is free, right? So there is such thing as a free lunch, like we said
Mm-hmm.
in finance, right? So um, uh, and Pakistan is going now through the consequences of excess of money printing, of excess of government expenditure, of all those things, right? So, for example, there are products that you cannot get in Pakistan because they cannot be imported because the government won't give the dollars to the companies to import, right? So, I mean, the situation is really, really bad there. I think that many people say that we could see the fall of Pakistan. I think that Pakistan has already fallen, right? So, I mean, it's only a matter to see how deep it goes, right? So, how deep is the crisis? But the crisis is already there. I mean, they have been going through from several governments that what did was just to spend money and make people really believe that money is free and that you can get money without working and you can get money for free, and that's not true in any scenario, in any country, in any world. Um, so yeah, I think that Pakistan is already in a crisis. It's only a matter of how deep it goes. The only exit for Pakistan, it's China. I mean, China is the only country that could potentially save Pakistan. You know that China has been doing a lot of work in the last years trying to get allies, right? So trying to get allies to fight against the US for the global power. And in that
Pakistan
sense,
was one of them.
and in that sense, Pakistan was one of them. So I think that the only one that can save Pakistan now it's China, right? So I don't see any way, because I mean they are already defaulted. They cannot ask for money to the IMF because they are defaulted with the IMF. They cannot ask for money to banks because they are defaulted. They cannot issue bonds because they are. So I mean, the only exit they have is China, and it's like, okay, it's basically selling their democracy to China, right? So selling the country to China and letting China take the government, right? But I think that's the only exit they have, because it's a really bad situation there, a really bad
Interesting.
situation.
So that being said, we can say that it's actually happening with many developing countries, right? And it seems
Yeah,
like all their situations are very similar.
yeah.
And
The post COVID crisis. I mean, during the COVID, all the economies that were a little fragile um, decided to print a lot of money to keep people happy, right? So uh, and now all those economies are paying the price of all that money printing, right? So and the same scenario is repeated in all the countries in the world. The difference is that if you go to the US, their economy is much stronger than Argentina or Pakistan, so they can recover faster, right? But countries like Argentina or Pakistan or Turkey with really weak economies um, won't recover that fast.
yeah.
They won't recover that fast.
So are we
That's
just at the beginning of it, or is it like somewhere towards the middle?
I think that now we are something towards the middle, right? At the beginning, we saw it like
Sri
from
Lanka.
June, July last year, we started seeing the beginning of the crisis in the world. Um, Mainly when we started seeing the crisis, mainly when they stopped printing money and they started raising rates, right? So that was March 2022. That was the beginning when the United States starts to increase the rates, and that leads all the countries in the world to increase their rates, and that's the beginning of the crisis in the world. So that's the beginning. I think that now we are going to the middle, through the middle. I don't think that we have seen the worst of this yet. Also in the US, I think that US will go into recession. It will not go. It will not be like a 2008 recession, right? I don't think that we are talking of that kind of crisis, but we could see like a small recession in the US, mainly maybe by the end of this year or beginning of 2024. But the problem is that a small recession in the US destroys the rest of the emerging economies, right? I mean, the US and China are the main buyers and sellers of everything in the world, right? So their economies combined is like like 60% of GDP or something like that. So or 30% of GDP. I don't recall now the exact number, but are the two main economies. So if they go into recession, the rest of the emerging economies will suffer much more, right? And also China. I mean, China, we don't know if it's on a recession or not, because The Chinese government publishes all their data, but they don't publish the process how they calculate that data. So we don't know if we can trust that China is not in a recession, or that China is not going through a banking crisis, or if China is not going through a housing crisis, right? I mean, we don't know it. I mean, we cannot see it. So I mean, China could be perfectly in recession right now, and we just won't know it. But I mean, if China and US go into recession, the emerging economies will suffer 10 times what US and China will suffer.
I have a very last question, and this is something super recent, and it's in regards to the grain deal. I mean, the failed grain deal between Russia and Ukraine and the war that's happening over there. Everyone heard that the grain prices went up. Are we facing possible hunger somewhere in Africa?
I mean, it all depends on how far the war goes, right? I mean, the damage has been done, and the shortage of food has now been set like I mean, it has stabilized, right? It has stabilized. Why? Because Russia didn't get more territory in Ukraine, and Ukraine didn't recover territory in their own country. So now we are like in a place where Russia is not going forward, but Ukraine cannot take Russia out of their territory. So it all depends on what happens after, right? If Ukraine can recover their territory, they will start producing again, and the food shortage will decrease a little bit. But if Russia managed to go through more of Ukraine territory, we could see new food shortages, right? Mainly because of wheat, for example, and those kinds of food. So yeah, I mean, it all depends on how the war evolves. Now we are like an impasse, you know, it's stabilized right now.
Yeah. So wheat prices are growing, but nobody knows what's going to happen, and that's still in the face of politics. So can we conclude that it's now 2023 July, and it's still mostly about politics, not economics? Like,
it's mostly about politics. Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Also because United States, you have an election year, so election years are also really politics.
So it's election years, war in Ukraine, Turkey situation, which is a political situation, Argentina situation, which is kind of a political situation, Pakistan, which is actually political situation as well, because it's all about China.
Wow. It's true. It's true. Wow. And we had to, and one thing that could add a little spice to all that is the BRICS going with their own currency, right? You know, that the BRIC countries are planning to launch their own currencies to trade between them with that currency. So that will weaken even more the US dollar, because, I mean, they are very large economies. I mean, China, Russia, Brazil, there are large economies.
India.
That stop using US dollars for international trade. So yeah, it's that's another thing that we have to consider.
That's going to happen in a month or two, right?
Yeah, I think that yes. I don't recall now, but yes, it's quite near. Yes, quite close.
Cool. So we can hopefully have another call by then and see what's going on.
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully, yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Esteban.
Okay, thank you
It
too.
was very nice talking to you, and we'll be in touch.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.